The dust rolled across the open plains like a restless spirit, curling around the weathered fence posts and scattering the brittle tufts of prairie grass as the sun bled into the horizon. It was the kind of evening where the world seemed to hold its breath, waiting for something to shift, waiting for a story to begin or to end. And for her, the girl trembling barefoot in the dirt with rope biting into her wrists, it felt very much like an ending. She stared downward, fiery red hair falling in tangled curtains across her face, as the men behind her muttered words that stung worse than the rope burn. Too weak, useless, dragging us down. She had heard those words all her life, but never delivered with this kind of cold finality. Behind the men, the wagon sat with its wheels half sunken in dust, 4 boys watching with wide, fearful eyes, and beside them, stepping forward with a heaviness in his boots and a silence like thunder, building in his chest, was the rancher, broad-shouldered, jaw carved like granite, coat flapping around him as the warm wind pushed past. He moved with a quiet power that made the murmuring men fall still. The girl didn't dare look up. She didn't expect kindness, not from strangers, not from anyone. She only expected more judgment, more abandonment. Maybe today they would leave her here to die. The thought was almost a relief. But the rancher, Elias Ward, stopped in front of her, not with anger, not with cruelty, but with a stillness that radiated something she couldn't interpret. His shadow fell over her like a shelter she didn't trust. The boys in the wagon, dusty and solemn, looked at him with an unspoken question, and he answered by simply reaching out, slowly, deliberately, and running his thumb along the coarse rope. 1 tug, 2. The knot loosened with startling ease. The girl blinked. She expected him to throw her back at the group, to lash her with words, to tell her she deserved it. Instead, his voice was deep, steady, almost gentle. "Who tied her?" he asked. 3 words, soft as smoke, but they cracked the evening air like a whip. None of the men answered. Elias turned slightly toward them, his gaze unreadable beneath the brim of his hat. "I asked a question." His tone didn't sharpen, yet somehow it became sharper. The leader of the group, thin, wiry, eyes sharp with defensiveness, lifted his chin. "She ain't strong enough," he spat. "Falls behind, complains, eats more than she's worth. We don't got room for dead weight." The girl swallowed hard, shame burning her throat. Elias's expression didn't change, but something in the air did. Attention twisted through the quiet. "So you tie her up?" he asked, voice colder now. "Leave her where coyotes roam?" The leader shrugged. "World sorts the weak on its own." Elias didn't move immediately, and that was what scared them. The man's silence held weight, the kind forged from loss and grief and years of saying little but meaning much. His boys watched him closely as though they knew what his judgment could bring. Elias looked at the girl again, really looked at her. Thin, yes. Trembling, yes. But there was something fierce in the way she held herself despite the fear, something bright hidden beneath all the dust and despair. "No one deserves this," Elias said quietly, cutting the last of the rope until it fell to her feet. "Not on my land." The men bristled. "She ain't your problem." The rancher stepped in front of the girl, coat shifting like a shield. "She is now." Something inside her broke. Or maybe, for the first time, something mended. The argument escalated quickly, raised voices, stomping boots, threats tossed like sparks into dry brush. But Elias didn't raise his voice once. He didn't need to. His presence alone pushed the men back until they finally spat curses at the dirt, climbed onto their wagon, and rolled away in a cloud of resentment. When the last wheel disappeared into the dusk, Elias turned to the girl. She flinched automatically, expecting a blow she had learned to anticipate before it came. But he only removed his coat, stepping closer with the slow caution one uses around wounded animals. He draped the heavy fabric over her shoulders wordlessly. Warmth, weight, safety. She had never known. "You hungry?" he asked. Her lips parted. No words came out. She hadn't spoken in how long she wasn't sure. She managed the smallest nod. Elias motioned toward the wagon where the 4 boys, older than toddlers, younger than teens, stared at her with curiosity rather than cruelty. "You ride with us," he said. "If you want." If she wanted. No one had asked her what she wanted before. No one had ever given her a choice. She lifted her eyes for the first time and met his. They were warm brown, tired but kind. The kind of eyes that had seen too much loss but still chose gentleness. She nodded again, clutching the coat around her thin frame. Elias helped her into the wagon, the boys shifting to make space. Their small hands offered her a tin cup of water, a piece of biscuit, shy smiles. For a moment, she didn't know how to breathe. Kindness felt foreign. Kindness felt dangerous. What if it disappeared tomorrow? What if she wasn't worth keeping? As the wagon began moving, she looked back at the fence where she had stood, tied and helpless. The image grew smaller and smaller until it vanished into the dusk. She inhaled shakily. This wasn't an ending. Maybe terrifying as it was the beginning of something she'd never dreamed possible. A home, a family, a life where she wasn't considered too weak, too slow, too much trouble. She didn't know why the rancher had helped her. She didn't know what he'd expect. But as the wind lifted her hair and the boys leaned gently against her, she felt something she hadn't felt in years: hope. And as the last light of the sun dipped beneath the plains, Elias Ward, silent, steady, unknowable, glanced back at her with a look that promised one thing: she would never again face